Alright, people, alright. Inna alhamdulillah wa kafah, wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulih al-Mustafa, wa ala ibadi alladhina irtada, wa man bihudahum ihtada, wa bi athari ahli al-Madinah iqtafa, wa ba'd. فسلام الله على القوم أهلا وسهلا بكم ومرحبا وانين لايتس bienvenidos a todos بخير راغله خوش آمدید and as always people swagatam alright mi gente ¿cómo están? ¿Qué tal? What's going down chicos y chicas? Let me just bring up the chat box, do a quick audio check. Why is my screen looking like it's been... Alright, that's... So, that... I don't know what the comments are going on. People are having a chat amongst themselves. It happens. It happens, man. It happens. So, why is my mic hitting the red over there? Let me just take this down a bit. See if that helps. Hello. So, people, talk to me. What's going down? Right. Somebody said, well, I thought it'd be, so. All right, Stefan, you're doing it. Much love. With the super chat. Those of you just tuning in, people, you know the protocol. Right, click like, click share. You got to spread the love, people. Spread the fitan and fasad. That's what I'm talking about. So, what will we be taking a look at tonight? Right, well, a ruling. I've been asked this question. I thought, chalo, I'll take a look at it today. It was on, buying pets, buying dogs specifically, people were asking, but I suppose buying pets by extension. Take a look at that. We'll take a look at this thing of, we'll take magic and relationships. You people, huh? People, you just can't... Well, people's struggles, huh? The challenges they go through. So, take a look at that. Obviously, our beloved Sheikh Yasir Qadi. I don't like speaking about just one person repetitively. अब क्या करें? कुछ तो मजबूरियां हुई होंगी. In the words of Bashir Badr Sahib, the famous poet, he says, that nobody is just disloyal just like that, that he says kuch to majburiyan hui hongi, that after all there must have been some pressure. So speaking of Bashir Badr, un momento, this I did have if I find it, that is. I did have something of Bashir Badr's that I did want to... I was thinking, I'll share that. Let me see if I can find it. May have... is this it? Wah. People. So... nothing like sharing a poem, huh? To get the ball rolling, people. So, this is Bashir Badr. It is in Urdu. Sar se paa tak wo gulabon ka shajar lagta hai. Wah. Shajar means a tree, like in Arabic. So, this is embodied roses, people. Ba wuzu ho ke bhi chhute hue dar lagta hai. Wah. मैं तेरे साथ सितारों से गुजर सकता हूँ, कितना आसान मोहब्बत का सफर लगता है. So, वाह. मुझ में रहता है कोई दुश्मने जानी मेरा, खुद से तन्हाई में मिलते हुए डर लगता है. Wow, quite a deep deep line there, that you see that within me there is resident within me a an enemy who a bitter enemy. That's what he's saying within him. That to be alone with himself, he finds himself now frightened. That's can be understood on many levels. That मुझ में रहता है कोई दुश्मन जानी मेरा, खुद से तन्हाई में मिलते हुए डर लगता है. And then जिंदगी तूने मुझे कब्र से कम दी है ज़मीं. वाह वाह वाह. जिंदगी तूने मुझे कब्र से कम दी है ज़मीं, पाँव फैलाऊं तो दीवार में सर लगता है. That is once again another very deep line right there. What that means is that he's addressing life, that you've given me less space than a grave would give me. And the bitter shock to reality in that if I was to kind of reach out, extend my legs, my head hits the wall. What he's trying to say is that in a grave, at least a person can lie, completely flat. And life hasn't even given him this much space. Obviously speaking in metaphors. But it's, wow. Bashir Badr, Sahib people, Bashir Badr. So, right, what is going down? You see, on that note, my thoughts, I was discussing this with, I was mentioning it to a few friends actually, that it's really fascinating how in certain cultures, you see, this is in light of depression. Okay. Depression is a, sorry, just getting my, people, my, skill, people, skill. So, in light of, you see, this recent century, depression has really become a phenomenon, quite a widespread phenomenon, and it's debilitating. It's kind of crippled countless people, led to all kinds of tragedies. Now, I was just observing and kind of contemplating how is depression okay now. Let me I know that you see a lot of people suffer from depression, so I'm trying to word this in the most precise way that I can. But you see, what if depression is a kind of self-fulfilling or a self-empowering psychosocial phenomenon with psychosomatic abilities. So let me elaborate. What if depression, obviously it's real, but what if it is actually in a great part a kind of theory, a myth, that if you embrace it, it then takes on a life of its own. And those people who don't embrace it as a myth, they are not as debilitated by it. I don't know. You see, I'm contemplating this theory that what I'm trying to say is, you see, the symptoms of depression, like the general things that they will say about the lack of interest in things, loss of appetite, the kind of insomnia, or this kind of sense of worthlessness, and all these kind of frustrations that people go through, they are felt generally as well. People do experience them without being clinically depressed. So if we call this clinically depressed, right? So people that may just sometimes go, everybody goes through these kind of experiences at some point, but it's not chronic, it's not long term. It may just be for a couple of hours, it may be for a day, some cases maybe a couple of days, but that's really it with normal people. Now, when people accept that actually there is a condition, I now have this condition, what happens is I think that it's like a virus, that it becomes it becomes autonomous, and it takes over. And I think it then, if not impossible, would become incredibly difficult to remove from the mind or the brain. And it would be then, it would manifest itself in very real qualities. Like, so you would see the insomnia, you'd see the loss of appetite, the losing or gaining weight or whatever, and all of these things would become real. So that's it's an interesting kind of theory. I know people may not like to hear that, but and I'll tell you what got me thinking further about this. I was watching this short clip on color in the past. So different communities in the past didn't have the kind of colors we have today, or they didn't have names for them. So it was called something like why the Greeks didn't see blue. It was a brief, just something on YouTube. Now it was highlighting that if you look at the old Greek texts, whether it's Homer or different people writing, they don't use the word blue, so they don't describe the sea or the sky as blue ever. In fact, they describe it as something like very kind of like muddy uh, waters and things like they don't use they may give it a description with something, but not something what we would associate with blue. If anything, they saw it as an offset of black, which is incredibly strange for us today, since blue is such a important, significant color in all of our lives. So the question is that could these people not see blue? Of course they could see it. But what happens is when they didn't have a name for it, that phenomenon is still observed, but not as powerfully. So so what they so sociologists and other sorry not other researchers, psychologists and other uh, people studying ethnographic studies have conducted tests where people who are unfamiliar with a particular color, let's say, they are asked to spot out what they see as different. So imagine they see um, pink as a shade of red, which many cultures did actually. So if they don't have a separate title for it, they're not as quick to point it out. Now, you might think, well, that's obvious, but it's actually not to these people. To these people, it will just be another form of red. But what happens is the moment these people are taught that that is actually a separate entity with the name pink, for example, or blue, or whatever it is, the mind now pronounces that color and amplifies it every time they see it. So the visual effects of picking up that color become actually much more vivid for those people after they learn that. So it's not that prior to that they couldn't see it, but after it becomes a much more real color to them in the real world, and pronounced and distinguished. So based on this, I was, that kind of got me thinking again. And I was thinking, if a person was not to embrace the myth of depression, would they still get as depressed as people who do embrace the myth? And my hypothesis is that they wouldn't. That they may get depressed, but not as depressed because because the mind can't resonate the myth because they haven't embraced it. So, that's my hypothesis. But yeah, I mean, it's food for thought. I know people may not like it, but what I was going to say, I got distracted mentioning this. What I was going to say is it's interesting how in the past certain cultures they glorified depression, and from that is the Urdu culture. It's really fascinating that the Urdu poetry from the 18th, definitely 19th century onwards, up until even today, although the great poets obviously are of the past, the concept of gham, this melancholy, this kind of state of being saddened and depressed, and was seen as something that they were all seeking. And it was like seen as a prize that I want your gham, that this was the thing, that they would, everything, it'd be always about gham-e hasti, gham-e jana, the gham of life, of existence, the gham-e zindagi, the gham of the beloved. All of these things, they sought them, and they weren't seen as a distinguished poet until they were inflicted by this gham. It's like when he says, what is it? मैंने सोचा, what is it? तू मिल जाए तो दरख्शां है हयात. That if I have you, then the whole, world or my life is enlightened. तेरा गम है तो गमे, oh, bloody hell. But he says, if I have your gham, then what is the need for the gham of this world? Now, it's interesting. It kind of that how those people, when they saw it in such a prize-like culture, it changes it absolutely changes everything to do with melancholy. I just, these were just some thoughts that I was really amazed by when I started contemplating over it. That, wow, I never thought of that before, how these cultures glorified depression. And when they glorified it, they almost sought it out. I'm not almost, they did seek it out. And it was a mark of, of distinction for them. So, yeah, just food for thought, people, just putting it out there. Right, so what is going on? Somebody said, lol, now depression is a myth. Well, everything is a myth to a great extent. So, when I said the myth of depression, I meant in this as a psychosocial narrative, because ultimately, most things are myths, even though we embrace them, like money. Money is a myth. Possession is a myth. Laws are a myth. States are a myth. Beliefs are a myth. All of these things ultimately are myths. I don't mean in the mythological sense. I just meant as things that actually exist in the mind. And then we associate them with something in the real world, but they're not actually, that association isn't as obvious. It's a human-made association. So, yeah. Anyway, food for thought, people. My laugh, is that a myth? That's actual, I'm afraid. You're doing it, people. You're doing it. But I feel that we should be allowed to speak about these things, including depression. We shouldn't have a culture where you're not allowed to question things. We don't want a fascist state, for God's sake. We can question God, but you can't question depression. So, speaking of myths and conspiracy theories and mayhem, people, the first couple to undertake the vaccine, oof, there they are, right in front of us, a young 20-year-old that couple who once they took the. I'm joking, people. No, there they are within the UK. So I know this is something a lot of people are disturbed by. I would, you see, people have asked me, I've said that although I don't have much faith in the vaccine because I feel that it's a rush job, I don't think equally, I don't feel it's the kind of like an end, the end of the world or it's some control mechanism. And I don't think you're going to kind of die by taking it or you're going to. So I'm, so that's my response to it. Okay. To people who are asking me that, would I take it? If I have to take it, I'll take it. I'm not kind of like, oh my God, if I take this, I'm going to turn into something, some kind of a zombie. But on that note, I don't have much faith in it because I feel it's a rush job. I feel it's just about making money. Pfizer are ruthless, if apart from, if they were to give a choice, Pfizer were to say, you could take the vaccine or you could take the Viagra. I mean, you'd have everybody lining up to take. They'll be like, yep, can I have an appointment, please? So I don't have, I don't believe the way that the hope that they're giving in saying, oh my God, this is something that's going to eliminate all of this. And I don't like the force factor. I'm just being real. I think that is a bit of a police state approach to kind of force people to take something. I mean, under human rights, you cannot force medical treatment upon an individual. That's part of the treaties that have been signed post World War II, that you can't force treatment, medical treatment or medical intervention, and people cannot be liable they cannot be punished for refusing medical intervention. That is a right that human beings ought to have. And even Islamically, you do have the right to refuse tadawi, refuse to be medicated. I'm not saying that somebody should refuse, because it's common sense that you'd want help. But if you doubt it, and you have a right to doubt things, like I feel that, look, it is a rush job. Come on, like, let's be real. I mean, they couldn't, in a couple of months, they knocked together a vaccine, and they've been trying for this virus. They've been trying for the AIDS virus for how long? No joy there with all the money in the world. And they get some kind of an antidote or something for this within a few months, backed by the world's leading Viagra company of the world. Yeah, but that said, I don't think you're going to become a zombie. I don't think this is the plot of the Dajjal. I don't think by taking this, there's going to be any serious implications, like you're going to kind of develop some. I don't feel that. If I had to take it, I'll take it. That's my perspective on it, for those of you that were asking. But you have follow and accepted if something is in your benefits. I don't know what that means. You will need to vaccine to travel your job. Yep, Duke. And that's my point. Yeah, I agree that if I had to take it, because most likely I would probably have to take it. I'm often traveling and stuff. If I have to take it, I'll take it. It's no big deal. Obviously, I wouldn't go running to be the first in line. Just because I can't be bothered. I mean, I don't really see much. I'm a bit skeptical on their process. I read somewhere that they only carried it out on 70 odd people. Have only something really weird, and I was like, that can't be for real. But I've been told anyway. That's enough talk on the vaccine. But that's my thoughts on it. I'll take the chip. Yeah, I mean, if they want to give that's probably the future, isn't it? We're all being chipped, and you're doing it, people. You're doing it. Right, what is going down? Opinion Che Guevara. Let me check with my Facebook. Gente, what's going down, people? What's going down? Siraj, you're doing it. You're doing it. Right. Zamaan, Claire, Fushi, you're doing it. You're doing it. Imam Kazi, you're doing it. Right. Alright, so we're on drugs tonight. Say pani se pyas. Yeah, that's standard. I already had the virus. What? And Fushi, that's exactly my point. That because I have already, I'm pretty sure as well. I've had COVID earlier on this year in spring, so I think to myself, what's the point? Yeah, well, so what's going on? Amy, you're doing it. Imran Khan, you're doing it. Right, so peoples, what else is going on? I did have a poem somewhere that I usually share. This is from Jigar Muradabadi's point.
एक पल में एक सदी का मजा हमसे पूछिए.
Oh, yeah, that's the wrong one. So, alright, we'll have to give that a miss then. So, what else is going down? Look at that. Right, let's take a look at some of your questions that are coming through. Any cure for a Wahhabi brain? Speaking of Wahhabi brains and some of the controversies, right, some of the controversies, people. Let's, there was, if I can, un momento. Right, let me just see where this is.
खादिम हुसैन रज़वी रहमतुल्लाह अलैह अल्लाह उसकी मग़फ़िरत कामिला फरमाए. इंतकाल हो गया बरेलियों से.
Right, this is a clip, people, that was being shared of a Chechen who the clip said he's forcing these women to remove the niqab. But I don't think he's forcing them, although he is kind of urging them. So they... So they, as you can see, remove the face veil. So this kicked up a bit of controversy online. So he's saying that, look, there is nothing in the Kitab wa Sunnah to prove this face veil thing, and it is a Wahhabi introduction, or a Wahhabi innovation. So now, although I admit it's not purely a Wahhabi thing, it has been in the fiqh textbooks since the beginning. However, he is absolutely correct in saying that it is not from the Qur'an or Sunnah. That part is absolutely true. So although the Hanafi madhab does also speak of things like face coverings, but they make it very clear this is not from the Kitab wa Sunnah. This is from, and some Malikis who spoke of it as well, made it very clear this was not from the Kitab wa Sunnah. This was from where they were in certain places, certain women felt endangered. So it was more saddan li dhari'ah, to kind of prevent a kind of harm in certain societies. It was not from the Kitab wa Sunnah. So they make it very clear. Now, some madhabs like the Shafi'iyah and some of the Hanabila did feel it was an obligation to cover the face. Now, there's nothing in the Qur'an wa Sunnah that clearly proves that, but they obviously extrapolated and took certain rulings for granted, and that's their perspective. So right now, although I am in favor of preaching that, making it very clear that, look, this face veil is nothing to do with the Qur'an wa Sunnah. of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Yes, some scholars have said this throughout the centuries, based on their day and age and based on their culture. Which, if you lived 1,000 years ago, in some, I don't know, some kind of dangerous, volatile territory, yeah, sure, if you did that as some kind of tribal practice. But if you fast forward to the 21st century, in all honesty, that's not really happening in the streets of London or Birmingham or Manchester or Paris or wherever it is, New York. These places, nobody's going to be so, oh my God, gobsmacked by the face of a of a woman. Even, I mean, she may be extremely beautiful, but nobody's going to just kind of jump out of a van, pick her up, and run off with just because they've seen her face. And those kind of things, although you may have feared the bandits 800 years ago living in a desert somewhere, today these things don't really happen like that in this part of the world. You don't need to be so frightened and covered up and like that. So just to be clear on that. Secondly, what this Mufti, the Chechen Mufti, is saying, so I agree, although in part he's just reducing it to the Wahhabis. The Wahhabis today emphasize this point more than any other groups. So that's why he's probably using them as an example. But it is more than just the Wahhabis who have said this. But to force women to remove it, should that be done? Right, okay, I don't agree with force. Okay, that would be wrong equally, because I think you shouldn't force people to do anything to do with clothing. So if somebody did want to walk around dressed like that, that's what you can do, is advise them if you're in that role, if they ask, or you're educating them that this is not actually from the Qur'an or Sunnah, that this was not what the Prophet taught. However, if you want to, although some men in the past did say this, but that's all it is, the opinion of some men. Now, if you want, it's not what God has said, it's not what the Prophet said, but some scholars did say it. So if you want to follow them and do this, that's ultimately all you're doing, is just following the opinion of a man who probably lived about 1200 years ago. But you're not following the Qur'an or Sunnah by doing it. However, if you do it, nobody should force somebody to, like, they should never rip it off or something like that. That would be equally a violation and an encroachment on that person's personal civil rights to be able to exercise whatever the hell they want, as long as it's not harming someone else. And them covering themselves is not harming someone else. So, yeah, so that's what I say. I'm not sure if in this clip the Chechnyan scholar is actually forcing them. And the people that wrote the kind of the title have listed it as he's forcing them. I'm under the impression he's just kind of urging them. But if it is force, that part is wrong. Cool, I hope that makes some sense. I'd been asked to comment on that. So that's my views on it, that it has no basis, but force of any kind is wrong. All right, people. So what else is going down? All right. Some scholars were mad. They said ridiculous stuff. Yeah. I've been asked, Duke, you're doing it. If they are also brainwashed that they need a niqab, then why do they leave their houses? Yeah, but you know what it is? Look, I'm going to be honest. Sometimes you can't, like, I don't blame the women, because really, although even the women that wear niqab won't admit to this, but really it's the men who've convinced them about this. And you see, they've been made to feel guilty. Like, if you do this, you're going to burn in hell. You're going to do this. So people, they do it because they worry about the afterlife. So they get like really, and sometimes in many cases, their men might be insecure. Like, I don't want no man to see what your face looks like. which, I don't, and people kind of pride themselves on it. They create these little echo chambers. I remember once speaking to someone, and he said that, and he said it in a very proud way. He said, I needed something from home, and I was somewhere, wherever he was. And he said, I needed that thing, and my mate was going to come. So his mate is going to meet his friend, and he needed this thing, and his mate is close to his house. So he asked his mate, can you go pick this up from my house? So nothing major, like, I don't know, let's say some papers. He needed some papers or some documents or something. Now, he said that when he went there, his wife, sorry, it wasn't papers, it would have been bigger, something larger than papers. But he said when he went there, his wife phoned him and said, your friend is here. So his friend phoned him as well, said, look, I'm there, nobody's opening the door. So his wife called him and said that, yes, somebody's at the door, but because he's a non-mahram, so he's not related to me, I will not open the door to him. I don't care. So he's like, Vah. He's like, Iman. Huh? ذَلِكَ الْمُؤْمِنِ. Confirm Jannati hai. Confirm Jannati. All of a sudden, the gates of heaven opened and the angels started singing praise and and the heavenly music, and the light came down. And she began her Isra wal Mi'raj. So the person, so this was like a really proud moment for this person. Like, I'm thinking, are these people seriously handicapped? like I'm thinking to myself, what the hell is this for real? Like, what that to me, honestly, is either these people are suffering from some psychosis. That's not normal behavior. That is psychotic behavior. I'm telling you, such mindsets out there are very. I would be very scared of such mindsets because that's just weird. That is, man. That's like taking weird to the nth degree. But anyway, so people, Ahsanullah Kushkaki, you're doing it. Says, I'm going broke with many super chats getting missed. You're doing it, Kushkaki. Let me look out for your super chats. Don't worry about it. Right here is one by Dil Feroz. Interview of Ali Sahti on BBC Asian Network, where he talks about classic ghazal music originated from the depressed of society, did not conform to their sexuality. Sexuality. Rather. How does the sex? I don't get the sexuality part. So what I take it what you're trying to say is the people couldn't act out on their sexuality, so they expressed it through. They kind of channeled it through this means. What they call in psychoanalysis sublimation, to sublimate. Rather, what Chacha Freud would refer to as sublimation, where you channel certain energy, usually of a kind of sexual or a kind of like some act that is usually passionate, but you channel it through some other means. So somebody making it result in art instead. But you're saying the same thing about poetry. That's interesting. I've not watched it. I will look out for it. You said it's on BBC Asian Network. Send me a link and I will check it out. All right. So what is going down? Soran Osman, Mufti Abu Layth. My dua is Allah bless you and your family. I love you, brother. Gio, I love you too, man. May Allah keep you happy. Ameen. Right, so Mufti took this joke too far. Right, so let's see what this one, man. I'm trying to find. Somebody said, Mufti, what are your thoughts on Mufti Muntasir Zamaan? Mufti Muntasir Zamaan is a good guy. I mean, from what I've known of him, we've met in the past once or twice, but we have remained remotely in touch on and off. So I have, upon occasion, WhatsApped him, and he does, reply very courteously. Despite his, I'm sure it's very clear his opinions don't agree with me, but he's been very respectful, very courteous. I do, if only all of these scholars were like that who disagreed with you, because I've not seen him ever being rude or being, and he's expressed anyway that he's open to have a dialogue. I have said to him that I would like to have a dialogue with him. He's not said no, but I think he said, look, just give him a bit of time. You see, the problem is a lot of these people have so much pressure from the, from the crowd, from the people who are sometimes maybe not directly paying them, but in that circle of who pay their salaries, because a lot of these people work in masjids, or work for Islamic organizations. So Islamic organizations are always with a particular denomination. They're never universal. They always follow a particular sect. So no matter how open they profess to be, they're usually not. So if one of their imams starts getting too pally with other groups, it bothers them sometimes. And especially somebody like me, because I'm a maverick, I speak my mind, so that upsets people sometimes. So I get that it is tough. It's tough, this one, it's not easy, this one. Mufti, do you make takfir of ISIS, al-Qaeda, Boko Haram and others? No, I don't make takfir of them. Although I don't, I suppose I would like to treat them as though I do takfir of them, but it is not our place in Islam to call anybody a kafir, ultimately. That is, only Allah knows who is a believer and who isn't. But obviously ISIS and these groups are as far removed from Islam as anybody could be, but as anybody that is not a Muslim could be. That's how, in practice, they are removed with their bloodthirsty approach. But it is true that they are ultimately basing their things on a twisted interpretation of the Qur'an or Sunnah. That is true. They are using verses which with a twisted, a kind of monstrous ta'wil, interpretation of it. So, and we can't deny that. We can't say, no, they're using the Bible. They're not using the Bible. They are misusing the Qur'an. Right, so what else is going down, people? Somebody said, what about jinn having sex? Huh? The sex, the jinn having the sex. Maybe with the religious kind who are like, actually, I've got, what? I'm going to deal a little later on with a question on relationships, intimacy. No, not intimacy, relationships and black magic and jinn. And then we can speak about. We can look at that then. Just trying to get through some of these. Right, I can't see your. It's just Kushkaki had said to me he had said on here that he'd been sending some super chats and I've missed them, so I'm just taking a look. There it is. Ahsanullah, you're doing it. Right, so the question is, fiqh question, do you automatically shorten your prayers 4 to 2 when combining prayers? I came back from a trip and had passed. However, I'm already at home and no longer traveling. No, that's not true. These are two separate matters which can also concur. Rather concur. So they are entirely separable as well. So one can combine prayers without shortening it, and one can shorten prayers without combining it. So, but when traveling, sure, these two will overlap. So you will combine prayers and shorten them. That is the sunnah. And that's what the Maliki madhab says. The Hanafi madhab says you have to shorten them. And the Shafi'i madhab says it's better not to shorten them. If just in case you thought everything was clear. But now you're probably thinking, what should I do? Obviously, you're going to shorten them because who wants to be spending more time praying? You haramis. That's what you thought I was going to say. Astaghfirullah. Tawbah. You shaitan mind. So, no, you can follow the sunnah of the Prophet and shorten them. Because if the Prophet shortened them, then who are we pretending to be extra pious? That's the logic. So, okay. What is going on, people? Now, right, let me just go to some super chats here. There's a chat, Salih. No, I've covered that. Right. I've covered that chat as well. Ibn Isa. Is it permissible to lie to Sam Harris's support team so that I can get exclusive subscriber-only content even though I can afford it? Do you think Sam Harris would really mind? That's the question. I know one thing for sure. Sam Harris would say it's definitely not a sin. And Sam Harris would say you're definitely not going to go to hell for it. That's right. Salam trader saying Mufti Sangaya Khairam Joram Mazeki. Right, what's going down? Right, Skeptic 46 has said, do Salafis believe Allah what? Allah laid L-A-I-E-D laid on his back and crossed his legs. Tawbah. I wouldn't be surprised if they did. I wouldn't be surprised. Because the Salafiyah are a bit incredibly strange in their beliefs about God. They have incredibly anthropomorphic beliefs, and so if they find it in a hadith, it said something like that, they will just accept it. So they used to believe that God, he will not only sit on his throne, but he will make the Prophet sit next to him on his throne physically. And some of them, some of these people in the past, they were called Hanbalis in the past. They had very strange, some of them even said that, I'm pretty sure if I recall this correct, that God had teeth. Honestly, he's so... it makes sense, in it? Huh? Makes sense. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And the reason they said that is because, you see, there's a hadith that that the Prophet laughed about something, and he laughed until... So this, in the hadith, it begins with something happens and a person laughs, and he says, do you know why I laughed? And they said, no. And he says, well, because the person who told me, the companion, he laughed excessively when this thing happened, and he said that when this had happened in front of the Prophet laughed excessively until you could see his teeth. And the Prophet said, so this is going part of that same narration, the Prophet said that God laughed in such a way when this incident had happened. So, based on this, some of the old Hanabila believed that also God laughs, and because the Prophet laughed in a way, because all of them laugh in a way to show the teeth. So, ha ha ha, like that. So, because they keep going back, and eventually in this text it says, because God laughed like this. So, they believed, oh, so maybe God's got some teeth as well. This wasn't the brightest of people writing the creed books. Like, they had the bottom set. All the top set. Like how in Desi cultures and these things, they want the children to always become doctors, engineers, this. And the person who's completely is a failure, like there's no hope, they say, you know what, you might as well just become a mulvi. Send him to the madrasa to become, because there's not much hope with this one. There's mild learning difficulties with this one. So similarly, all the top spec, they went into philosophy and law and fiqh and all these other things, and the bottom set, they ended up like kind of saying, okay, we might as well go into creed, aqidah. You're dogmatists. So, right, what is going on? Right, so were there Shias involved in the UK grooming gangs? I don't know. Were they? Were they Shia? I don't know. I just know that they were in several of them were Muslim. I don't know what denomination. Right. So let's a couple of. Some people still talking about the Muhammad Abdul Baqi. You're doing it. Much love for the super chat. Yeah. शर्मिंदा कर देते हैं आप with these kind of super chats. You're embarrassing me, Right, so Salam Mufti, I recently found your channel and I have greatly increased my love for the deen. Geo, live, long live. This one, no good translation. Right, so I have a question. What does Allah speak about when mentioning corruption in verses 532 is capital punishment, the prescribed punishment. Oh, are you talking about rather? Bismillah, let's see. I believe you're talking about the fasad fil ard, but just to make sure, don't want to misquote. Yep, so that's it. إنما جزاء الذين يحاربون الله ورسوله يسعون في الأرض فسادا. So those who conduct hiraba. Now this yuharibuna is a kind of like a declaration of war, but here it doesn't mean war. It means this whoever is conducting hiraba. Now I'm using the Islamic term because I'm just going to come to what that means then. And وَيَسْعُونَ فِي الْأَرْضِ فَسَادًا, and that they endeavor, they kind of, they incessantly strive to spread this. Now it doesn't say, I suppose fasad can be translated as corruption, but they're saying fasadan fil ard. So these two things, that they are punished, and it mentions capital punishment as the punishment that they are executed. So what is this fasad that is being spoken of, that they are so eagerly trying to spread? And what is hiraba? Now, hiraba, according to many of the fuqaha, would be what modern day terrorism is. So it was to strike terror in the hearts of people. Now, how did people do that in the past? Obviously, today people go detonate a bomb somewhere. In the past, what was equally on that level of terror? Now, it may, when we hear these kind of equivalents, they don't match up because we think in the past, one of the key things was like these bandits that were like highway robbers of the past. Now, we may look at that as highway robbers. What the hell is that? But you see, they actually struck terror in the hearts of people because in the past, you didn't have, like, you had set roads that only went to, you're trying to go to this place. There's only this road, this one long path that, people use to get there. So as you're going through the desert and things like this, and let's say you're approaching, you're not near the city, but you could be, I don't know, a mile off in that day and age. So, and it's a deserted area, and you had these bandits that would, be waiting. They would, apart from just looting the caravan, on many occasions, they would do a lot of, it was more than just wealth. Like sometimes they would obviously destroy everything you've got, take everything, and leave you just stranded. Now, this could be in the middle of a desert, no water, no anything. You don't exactly know. Sometimes it wasn't that close to the city. It could have been much further away. You've got children. Sometimes they would take away, snatch the women. Sometimes they may kidnap the children. So many people who were enslaved in the past were enslaved by being kidnapped by bandits. Many people, including many of these great scholars, sometimes you read about that became great authors later on, like Yaqut al-Hamawi, or these great people. When they write about how they became enslaved, it was usually they were on a caravan going somewhere, and these bandits come who rob it, and then they may snatch some women if they find them attractive, and they would, with certain men or certain boys, they may enslave them, like kidnap them and sell them as slaves. So this is what they did, and those people that they left, often they would just plunder the thing, and you'd be left without water, without food, in the middle of nowhere. So this was the kind of terror. The terror that it would strike would be the way, just from an experiential perspective, if today a bomb went off somewhere, the way everybody would be freaked out. This is how people were, they were that scared of bandits. So this is the opinion that many ulama took, that this is what yuharibun, this is what hiraba was, that these people, that qutta'u turuq, these people who were these bandits. And yes, the punishment for them in that day and age was placed as execution. And if you read it, it doesn't just say execution, it says yuqattaluna, and it goes on and describes in detail. In other verses as well, you'll have, and the reason it does that is to strike fear back in their hearts, to let them know that, you see, so it says that يَسْعُونَ فِي الْأَرْضِ فَسَادًا أَن يُقَتَّلُوا, don't just kill, like you decimate them. This is the punishment. They are decimated. وَيُصَلَّبُوا, and you will then hang them up as crucified for people to see. وَتُقَطَّعُ أَيْدِيهِمْ وَأَرْجُلُهُمْ مِنْ خِلَافٍ, and you will cut off their hands and feet at the ends, at the extremities, and hang them up like that. And then it does mention other alternatives as well. So it does say that, oh, yunfo min al-ardi, and some people took these as each one of these are layers. So for example, that they could be killed, or they could be crucified, hung up, or they could have their extremities cut off, or they could be yunfo min al-ard. Now, this last one is just to be ostracized, that they are sent off to some distant land to live, and they're stripped of any possessions that they have. Now this, O yunfo min al-ardi, ذَلِكَ لَهُمْ خِزْيٌ فِي الدُّنْيَا وَلَهُمْ فِي الْآخِرَةِ عَذَابٌ عَظِيمٌ, that this is their punishment in this world, and in the afterlife they will have a great punishment. This is to, the layered approach is subject to the severity that they have conducted. So in some cases, maybe they just robbed people, but they weren't actually going beyond that. And so for them, they might have just been ostracized, and some people may be robbed and killed, and some people, so they might be in turn killed or had limbs cut off, and some people may have kidnapped and tortured and decimated and plundered. So for them, they may be crucified and so on. This obviously wouldn't apply today in that same way, and you can watch my video on trajectory hermeneutics and how the Sharia mandates that punishments are changed with the day and age. It's on YouTube. However, this was mentioned to strike back an equal amount of fear. That if you were going to be one of those bandits, one of those terrorists in that day and age, you would think twice before you, set upon such a path. I hope that makes sense. Rami Nazim. Rami Ramin in some languages just means like everybody knows what it means. Rami. Cha cha. Right, there's so Rami Nazim has sent in a question. What is literally the definition of riba? Is it excess or uncertainty? Heard some people say I don't deal with interest, others say I don't deal in uncertainty. Both are ridiculous, but they claim the legitimate definition. Rami, please watch my whole video on riba. I go through the definition, linguistic definition, and the Shara'i definition are not the same. So linguistically, riba simply means an increase, an excess. Shar'an, it refers to loan sharkery. But if, not every excess is riba, so obviously that's understood. So just as you have words in Arabic, so let's say tahara, cleanliness, purity, purification. Now this linguistically simply means to clean something, but shar'an, tahara means doing wudu or doing ghusl. It does not have just a normal cleanliness. That's not what it means when it uses the word. So if somebody said, oh yeah, Allah wants us to purify ourselves before we let's say pray, I know I'm going to purify myself by just washing my face, and what I'll do is I'll just use some deodorant and use this and use. It's not the linguistic meaning, it's the technical meaning. Okay, cool. I'm really Ahsan, now I'm really confused. Just messing. Truly appreciate you, Mufti Saab. Alright, dostum, man, you're doing it with the Farsi. Right. Preacher Muhammad Hablas says that a child rapist murderer is better than somebody leaving just one prayer. Yeah, I mean, well, what do you expect from Hablas? People like that, I don't know why Muslims listen to them, but khair, you know what it is? Muslims and religious people generally, and Muslims are no exception. Religious people suffer from a kind of this sense of they have a kind of sadomasochistic urge. they have this sadomasochistic urge in religious matters to feel bad. Like they want somebody to make them feel guilty. They like that. They're hooked on it. They're addicted to it. So they listen to people that tell them that they are scum and horrible and, sinful, and God despises them, and they're going to be punished and tortured in the afterlife, and they kind of, you see, that they want to be made to feel bad and feel guilty, because then they, I don't know, like you see, they find that obviously must fill a void that they have. I feel these are psychological issues, this kind of obsession around guilt, which is really a very heavily a Christian thing, but it is found in other cultures, and unfortunately it's found amongst many Muslims too. It is not really from the authentic Qur'an wa Sunnah. Right. Sam Harris is the modern Leibniz. Sam Harris, yeah, I mean, I haven't heard Sam Harris for a good while, but when I did before, he was, I mean, he's incredibly intelligent, incredibly, he is, um, I have to say that lecture between the dialogue between Sam Harris and Jordan Peterson is, iconic. That is just epic. I would feel that that is a must for anyone that considers faith or philosophy at a serious level, that they have to listen to. And it's the first one. I know they did a series of 3, but the first one, I think it's in Vancouver. It is, wow. It is just, I must have heard it, a couple of years ago now, and it's still with me. Like, amazing. And he is absolutely, unquestionably, Sam Harris is a genius. But I just felt in the last few years, I felt he became so bitter against Muslims that it kind of poisoned his charm. He became like just so bitter. But I don't know if he still is, because I haven't really watched much of him in the last maybe 1.5 years. I haven't really seen much of him. But before that, I did used to watch quite a few clips that would come up on YouTube. So, yeah. All right. So, right. What else, people? Oh, yes. There's some news I wanted to share. If I just bring up. Right. Those of us that may know of Mufti Zar Wali Khan. Now, Mufti Zar Wali Khan has passed away. He is a Mufti from Karachi. Incredibly eccentric, and I'll just say a few words on him. He's passed away. May Allah forgive him and bless his afterlife, and anybody's, really. Although he would have been somebody who naturally would have probably cursed me during if he was ever aware of me. He was the founder of Jamia Ahsan al-Ulum in Karachi. Now, right, so he was very outspoken on many matters, and that's something I admire him about, because he kind of had the courage to speak up, at least. Because many people, the truth is, many subcontinent scholars, especially Desi scholars, they are completely lack any self-confidence to be able to even have an opinion. They can't even have a single opinion that their teachers haven't had. Like, they're not allowed to. And it's no different today. You get all these Deobandi, Brelvi imams, all these people, they can't have a single opinion outside of their narrative. So yes, if there's a difference of opinion, and some of the imams have had opinion A and some have had B, they're allowed to choose, but they can never just go out of and come up with a totally different opinion. They're not allowed to. But Mufti Zar Wali, like that, he did, and he was somebody very he used to cuss people. And here's some clips of him actually recently when Khadim Hussain Rizvi Saab had passed away. You see, it was weird because Deobandis in the subcontinent, some Deobandis started to praise him, including Maulana Mingal, and I'll just show a bit of this. And he started to say, oh, the guy was really, he had a heart of steel, because he spoke out for the love of the Prophet. And, he spoke against people who are gustakh. that is people who insult blasphemers. Now, you see, I find this really really strange coming from Deobandis, because in all honesty, you guys are gustakh according to them. So if you keep supporting Brailwi ulama who are calling for the execution of gustakhs, then you're, guess who's next in line to be executed? You don't have to be a genius to figure that out. It's you. So this is when people like Mufti Taqi and these people, make these stupid remarks where they praise people that have executed people on grounds of blasphemy. It's so, it's so infuriatingly ridiculous to listen to. But nevertheless, here is a clip from
खादिम हुसैन रज़वी रहमतुल्लाह अलैह, अल्लाह उसकी मग़फ़िरत कामिल फरमाए। इंतकाल हो गया। बरेलियों से हमारे इख्तिलाफ है, छोटे मोटे मसाइल में कुछ इख्तिलाफ तो हमारा है, लेकिन फिर भी एक नर का बच्चा हमारे देवबंदी सर नीचे है हमारे
लोगों से कोई मुतासिर होता है।
आप
फिर ये कहना कि उसके लिए दुआ करें और देवबंदियों का सर नीचे, आपका सर नीचे होगा, देवबंदियों का तो सर भी ऊपर है और टांगे भी ऊपर है। ये कहना कि बिदअतियों से थोड़ा बहुत इख्तिलाफ है, ये आपकी खाम ख्याली है, ये आपके मजहब से और मसलक से नावाकिफियत की दलील है कि आप जैसे जैसे टेलीविजनों पर आ रहे हैं और आगे बढ़ रहे हैं, इल्म छिन रहा, सल्ब हो रहा है। यही तारिक जमील का हाल हुआ है। अब आप भी वही चीज बनते जा रहे हैं।
Tariq Jamil is also somebody he spoke against.
बरकतों वाले हैं
This is him, Mufti Zar Wali.
उदू रब्बकुम तदर्रुअन
Here
व
he starts
खुफिया,
mocking Tariq Jamil
पुकारो
Sahab.
अपने रब को आजिजी से और आहिस्ता, इन्नहु ला युहिब्बुल मुअतदीन, बेशक वो पसंद नहीं करते हद से बढ़ने वालों को। या अल्लाह, आपने अच्छा
He's mocking Maulana Tariq Jamil here.
अल्लाह, आपने अच्छा वज़ीर-ए-आज़म दिया। वही राफिजी, वही जाकिर और मजलिसी।
Right, so there you go. So surely not somebody I would generally agree with as a person, neither with his views, and I'm sure he would hate my guts and call me an instant kafir. But that said, I did admire his courage to be able to have independent opinions, which is seldom found in the Indian subcontinent. Yeah, that mocking, when I saw that was just and that was ironically Maulana Tariq Jamil Saab writing about him having passed away. Maulana Tariq is a very, I have to say, a very good character scholar, somebody who's always, he's a very compassionate person, so he always speaks well of people. But yeah. So what is going on, mi gente? Right. Does the Qur'an say that the Christians are the worst of creation? Does it mean them to Naqshbandis follow a... No, I mean the Qur'an wouldn't say Christians are the worst of creation. That doesn't make any sense. In fact, the Qur'an says لَتَجِدَنَّهُمْ أَقْرَبَ النَّاسِ مَوَدَّةً, that they will be the closest of people who have love and compassion for Muslims in that day and age, because they were the closest to Arabia. So you may find sometimes other communities that are close. Mufti, is it mandatory to go to Jummah every Friday? I have answered this before, that look, Jummah is a communal obligation, which is which has a religious and a political aspect to it. So the question which has led scholars to disagree is which part preponderates. Is it more the political factor or more the worship ritual factor which preponderates? So I would feel that there is a more of a political step to it. And by political step, what is meant is an it's a almost setting into place an organizational structure. So it's known, it's disciplinarian for a state, a Muslim state. And that's why they always mention who the names of the rulers and things like this in it. Therefore, in lands which are not Muslim lands, which are not really the countries are not Islamic. I mean, they're not against Islam, like the UK or America or Europe. I mean, I don't believe the UK is against Islam, and you have your freedom to exercise Islam, but it is not by any means an Islamic, or it's not a Muslim country. Therefore, is Jummah mandated in this country? I would say that I don't feel it's mandated. I don't feel it's mandatory. But it's good to have it, and it's a communal setup. Then it's done for the community. If each person, upon each individual, there is not in that case a mandatory obligation to attend. That would be my understanding. Yeah, cool. So I'm from the UK. All right. Across the sea from America. All right. Huh? De-Pakistanified. Whatever that means. Surah Toba abrogates every latter ruling. Okay, I'm not sure. Quoting verses in English is funny. Yeah, I mean, it can be, I suppose, if they're misreading them. Right, so. Right, what is going on? Let me check as well. Facebook, what's going on? What is going on, people? Athar Khan. Oh no, that's Siraj replying to Athar Khan. Great question, but do you know two horns thing wasn't specific to Alexander? Also, that book was written after the Qur'an. I take it you're talking about Dhul Qharnayn. Right. Assalamu alaikum, Mufti. Can you explain the Dhul Qharnayn story with regards to Alexander's romances? Right, now okay. Dhul Qharnayn of the Qur'an. In my understanding, people go, yeah, why do you always give your understanding? Ab teri baap whose understanding should I give? Your dad's. Obviously, I have to give my understanding. Samjha karo, yaar. Samjha karo. Alright, so in my understanding, Dhul Qharnayn is most likely Cyrus the Great. Yeah, people, yeah, Cyrus. I don't think, no, he definitely wasn't Alexander, but Cyrus seems to make sense. Why? You see, you may say, ¿por qué? ¿Por qué, Mufti? ¿Por qué? So, the reason being that the territory that Cyrus the Great conquers and rules over. I was in two minds that could it have been Darius as well, who's from the same, the Achaemenid dynasty, but but most likely it is Cyrus. And that's because of you see, it wasn't just the ruling so many people, but he did stand for several principles of justice, which are still incorporated in modern times. So you have, you will have even today. I believe it's used by several. Let me see. That I believe are the first or several articles of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights are also based upon this. Let me see. Right, anyway. Oh, that's it, yep. So, the Cylinder of Cyrus, right, which is known as the Edict of Cyrus as well, and it was, they found this kind of cylinder kind of tablet which had these inscriptions on there, and it contained a declaration that Cyrus had made after conquering Babylon. And so that is, that this is obviously 500 something BC before before Christ. So now he was this. Let me just bring this back. This was a declaration that he had made about the preservation of human rights. So he was also one of the first people. I'm not saying he was the first, but amongst the earliest kind of people of whom we have records, who spoke about actively preserving human rights. And he was in a position of power to do so. So sometimes philosophers may have spoken of these things, but they weren't the rulers. They weren't the kings. They weren't the dynasts, whereas he was. The other thing is he also frees the Israelites and supports them financially in the restoration of the temple. Now, this is why the Jewish people hold Cyrus the Great in such high esteemed praise in their records and books. Now, you have to remember that when Surah Al-Kahf is speaking, it is highlighting a dialogue that the Jewish people are asking the Prophet, that yas'alunaka, that they are asking you about the soul, they are asking you about this, they are asking you about Dhul Qharnayn. So whoever Dhul Qharnayn is, he is somebody that the Jewish people are most likely very fond of or very familiar with, because they are the ones asking the Prophet about him. So to say it's Alexander the Great doesn't make any sense. He was never really in that kind of a position or held fondly by the Jews. So whereas Cyrus the Great was, and he also fits these other descriptions. So I feel that is who Dhul Qharnayn is being referred to as. Yes, somebody said it was prophesied in the Bible as well. Yes, of course. Right, so what is going on? Mufti, are Muslim men allowed to wear earrings? You can just watch my YouTube detailed video on that. I will. I've covered it in great detail. Just watch that. Inaya, you're doing it. So, where is Frowdy? I think Frowdy is on holiday, if I'm correct. Hey, Mufti. All right, Mahmoud, you're doing it with the super chat. Much love. What is your reply to people who say that it is haram to throw up this gesture. This one right there. Also, my name is Mahmoud, not Muhammad. Acha. Hi, Mahmoud. You're doing it. So this gesture, a lot of people get annoyed, or not annoyed, they get agitated. Oh my God, Mufti's thrown up or this one, they see it as the devil, because the devil has horns. Obviously, how do they know that? Because their dad has told them. They go, Abbaji, how does the devil look? And the Abba goes like this. Got two horns here. Your insider knowledge. So, look, the devil does not have horns. Okay. This is the stupidity, isn't it? So because people buy into this, then they think, oh my God, that's the devil sign, because that's the devil. Devil got horn in it. Devil got horn in it, so it will be haram in it. Devil no got horn in it, no got horn. Right, so it's perfectly fine to make any gestures you want. It doesn't validate the devil. The devil, shaitan, couldn't care less. Okay, so somehow to think this is somehow empowering the devil. People need to really learn the deen. They need to understand what the essence of Islam truly is. It isn't this, the Satan isn't this thing that you've pictured. So it's perfectly fine. That's my reply to those people who say that, why do you do this? This is the devil's sign. So that's what I'd say. It's a hex sign. Okay, sure, Crocodile Dundee. You're doing it. Alright, Santi. Assalamu alaikum, hermano. Alright, ¿qué tal? ¿Cómo está? What's going down? You're doing it. I'm just trying to see some. Alright. You're doing it, people. I do it on purpose to wind people up even more. Just throw these signs around. You're doing it. So, what is going down? Right. Stefan had asked a question. Super chat is shukran. Much love for the super chat. Why was Ibn Taymiyyah in jail? Ibn Taymiyyah was in jail because really he had annoyed a lot of people, some of whom were powerful. Now, I'm not saying I agree that, because I believe there should be religious freedoms. You can't kind of persecute people over religious differences. But because Ibn Taymiyyah went around doing takfir on people, calling people kafirs and all of this, so you have to remember, in that day and age, go back 600 years, if you think today people are narrow-minded, can you imagine what they were thinking like 600 years ago? And, you're calling people kafir. And Ibn Taymiyyah, like I've said before, he suffered, I feel, from like mental health issues. So he was obviously intelligent. And sometimes he was on the ball, but sometimes he would kind of flip. Maybe he had like bipolar or something, but he would flip and turn very bitter and nasty towards Muslims for the most part. Call them kafirs, deviants, insult them, do all this kind of stuff. So you can imagine you would create a lot of enemies. Now you have to remember that most Muslims, now he was Hanbali, he would shield himself by saying, well, this is my Hanbali belief. I'm allowed to be Hanbali. It's from Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal. So this would kind of protect him a bit. But you have to remember that Hanbalis are a tiny fraction of the Ummah. They have always been a tiny fraction. They've never really, at most, they would be lucky to have been probably 5%. Your Hanbalis. Because most scholars never even recognize them as a madhab. But okay, later on they said, all right, fine, they're a madhab. But they've always been a tiny minority of this ummah. So the majority, why I'm saying that is so the majority of the people are going to be Ash'ari, they might be Sufi, they might be stuff like this. So if the majority of the people are like that, then the people of power are going to be from those people. So the judges were incredibly powerful people back then. They're not like judges today. The judge back then was like pretty much like a mayor of a council today. You know, the mayor that would be involved in local political affairs. They would be involved in these kind. They weren't just like today. A judge just presides over that particular, genre of law. That's it. But in that day and age, they were much more involved in the community. So he was brought before several judges and on certain issues to do with Aqidah, belief. But in the end, they imprisoned him over a stunt that his student had pulled. Guilty by association. And it was actually some of the Malikis that screwed him over in the end. And I don't agree with them screwing him over, even though they are fellow Malikis. But I'd be like, come on, Maliki, behave. So there was a judge called the al-Ikhnai and other people, these other Malikis, who said that his behavior was a crime. And what that was, you see, they used this same thing of like what Maulana Khadim Hussain Rizvi Saab using. Blasphemy. Allah, Allah. The famous, the go-to card for ulama. You blaspheme, huh? Those who blaspheme, not nice, Ulta latka do, ulta. So what had happened is Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyah, right, who actually, these people are very intelligent. So for intelligent people, they do some dumb stuff sometimes. So this is an example of a dumb moment that Ibn Qayyim Saab has. Ibn Qayyim goes on a visit to Jerusalem. So he goes there, and whilst he's in Bayt al-Maqdis, he's in Masjid al-Aqsa, or Dome of the Rock, whichever one. He's in the masjid. He says, so they start speaking. Oh no, he's giving a speech. So they ask him, because he's a scholar, they say, can you give a khutbah? So he gets passionate in his khutbah. Ooh, he's getting passionate. Yeah, ooh, he's getting into it. Drums. Brrr. And then he says, nobody should travel to any place. La tashuddu rihal. You should not travel anywhere except to these 3 mosques. And then he, in his passion, he says, here in Jerusalem, you have so they claim that this is where Abraham was. And the rock is dedicated to Ibrahim alayhi salam, Khalil. And so he says that this maqam here, this kind of religious sanctuary for Abraham, I refuse to visit it. He says, even though I'm right here, I refuse to visit it. Why? Because it's equally impermissible to go to Medina to visit the Prophet. You can only go to Medina to visit the mosque. And to visit the Prophet is secondary. So it's, since you're there, you've kind of, now that you're here, you can visit the Prophet, but you can't go there with the intention to visit the Prophet. So if I'm not going to do that, then it would be hypocrisy to visit this place dedicated to Abraham. So this is what he said in his speech. He got a bit carried away, he got a bit excited, blood's running, and he's like, he says, this is haram as well. Chache. So obviously people flipped. People are like, what the hell is this guy on about? They go, yeah, what the hell is this guy? This guy's disrespecting Ibrahim alayhi salam, and he's disrespecting the Prophet. So Ibn Qayyim legged it from there anyway. He got away. They said, forget him. he's getting this from his teacher. Catch his teachers. So this was the pretext or the excuse on, based on which they imprisoned Ibn Taymiyyah. So they said, because that was Ibn Taymiyyah's fatwa, that you can't go to visit the Prophet, that it's haram to visit the Prophet. You can only visit the Prophet like coincidentally, that now, now that I'm here, blimey, I'm here now. I Ibn Taymiyyah. So this is what I mean. He had his, kind of like dumb moments. So that's what they locked him up over. Although I disagree with locking people up and stuff like that. And I do feel his opinion is dumb, but I don't feel you can punish them over it. It's enough of a punishment, the fact that they have these dumb opinions. That's like life has beat you to it. They're already being punished. The fact that they've got dumb opinions. That said, he did have other good opinions and other good things, not to disregard him totally, but this was the reason he was locked up. Cool. Moving on. So, right, so what is going on? Somebody said, can you explain Bukhari Hadith 4138? Acha, 4138. You see that's having a good opinion. See, this person has Zishan. He has a good opinion of me, you see. He thinks like, I just have to say to Mufti, can you explain Bukhari Hadith 4138? And Mufti would go, right, that's 4137. 4138 is Wah, Gio. You're doing it. Right now, so meanwhile, in other news, people, I had been asked a question about owning pets. Okay, right. Yep, I'd been asked a question about, is it permissible to own a pet, as in buy a pet? And you may wonder, well, why such a question? Because there are certain hadith that are in the books which may give that impression. Now, if you take a look at this hadith, it's this particular one is from Sahih Muslim. And you can see it right there. It's being transmitted through Abu Zubayr, who obviously is questionable, but nevertheless from Jabir, that the Thamnul Kalb was Sinnur, and Sinnur is arguably to some a wild cat, and to some, maybe a cat, but really it's more a wild kind of cat, not the domesticated cats. That the Prophet, he forbade people from getting that, and he kind of told them off, reprimanded them for it. And you've got another hadith right here of a similar nature, and there's several like this, by the way, by varying companions. And this particular one that you can see right here, it mentions that the Prophet, from Rafi' ibn Khudayj, that the Prophet ﷺ said, Thamnul Kalb, that the price that the money made from a dog, meaning to sell a dog, is khabith, is foul, and mahrul baghi. So the mahar, the money paid to a prostitute, but the word mahar actually means the dowry for the prostitute is khabith, is foul, and the kasbul hajjam is foul. Now the hajjam means the person who does hijama, bloodletting or cupping, which is practiced. Now, in these hadith, it appears that the Prophet is saying that these things are khabith or are, foul. So people have understood this to mean haram. Right, now, I just wanted to clarify that that's not the case. This is not haram. Okay, to buy a pet is not haram. And scholars have clearly highlighted that, including several Malikis. You will get Sahnun, Ibn Kanana, the student of Imam Malik. You will get Imam Abu Hanifa, who highlights that it's permissible. Now, this was all part, why such narrations about dogs? Because there's other narrations where the Prophet says, beware of such a dog that is like this and it has certain features. And then in certain narrations, don't keep them in your homes and don't do this. This, as I've highlighted before, was all to do with the diseases that certain pets or certain animals had, like dogs that were infected with rabies, and it became indistinguishable and you weren't sure which dog had it and which didn't. It's not like today where people get these things tested. And these illnesses, like rabies, are incredibly fatal. So even today, despite modern medicine, unless treated within a small window, even today it is fatal. So you can imagine 1400 years ago how incredibly dangerous such things were. And hence the Prophet said, if a dog licks a bowl of water or a bowl of something, that wash it out 7 times and an 8th time with soil. And it's interesting how rabies cannot survive in certain things like soil, because such a ruling is not even given for a pig. It doesn't say, like, if a pig licks something or drinks from a bowl, you don't have to wash it 7 times. But the Prophet said this, so why? And it's because of the diseases that they were carrying. And hence the Prophet said at a particular time to put down dogs where they could find them. But it wasn't a religious ruling. It was a ruling based on the kind of the diseases that were going round at that time. So similarly here, the Prophet was discouraging people from going to buy more dogs. It wasn't a religious ruling. Okay, and all of these things were like that. They were circumstantial. They were not based on a religious pretext or premise. And an example of that is, here is a hadith in Bukhari where you can see right now, let me see. I'll bring it up, but there is a narration, sorry, that was the same one. There is a narration in Bukhari that the Prophet ﷺ himself has hijama done. So he has hijama and he pays the person. So if that's, let me just see if I can bring it up to show it to you guys as well. There it is. So, nope. All right, there it is here. So you can see that here there is a hadith in Bukhari that the Prophet ﷺ احتجم النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم وعطى الذي حجمه, and he paid the person who did the cupping. ولو كان حراما لم يعطيه. Now this is a hadith where Ibn Abbas is transmitting it, that if it was haram, then why would the Prophet himself have this done and himself pay the person? So it was not haram, but it was dependent, it was circumstantial and contingent upon certain factors. So yes, the Prophet did at times discourage bloodletting, cupping. Why? Especially when people were fasting or in certain periods when the community was suffering from a lack of food and sustenance, and they didn't have much crops and things like this. Now, bloodletting would just make a person, just weaken the people. And because some people felt it was a cultural thing, or some people also associate like a freshness and even like a good luck to it because of maybe the confidence they get, so they do it religiously. So let's say they have cupping every week or every 2 weeks done now, or every month done. Now, if the community was suffering from malnutrition and people are already weak, but because these people out of habit are going to do it anyway, and it's going to further weaken that small society, it's situations like this that the Prophet said that kasbul hajjam is khabith, because right now it would be foul because it would just further add to the suffering. So these rulings are based on contingencies. They are not absolutes, okay? It is permissible to buy a pet or to sell a pet. I hope that clarifies that. And I did explain as well the ruling as explained by certain scholars. I did mention that Imam Abu Hanifa was also amongst those ulama, and here's a Hanafi source just to show that as well. This is Mullah Ali al-Qari from his Sharh on the Mishkat, just mentioning those ulama that said it was right, that it was only the dangerous animal that was forbidden, but otherwise Abu Hanifa does say that, look, you can benefit by buying and selling dogs. Okay, I hope that helps. Right, let's move on, people. Yes, of course, and somebody has mentioned things like shepherd dogs and stuff like that, sheep dogs. Of course, those, even scholars, many scholars historically made that exception. But I was saying this unrestricted, provided there are no health safety concerns, then it is permissible from an Islamic perspective. Mahmoud, again, you're doing it, Mahmoud. You're doing it. Wah, wah, wah. Much love for the super chat. Do you think reason is something humans learn, or is it instinctive? I feel that it is something instinctive. However, we, throughout our lives, I feel that we sharpen our ability to reason. So it is something that is natural to human beings. I don't think it's so a human being is born without it. Just saying. I just felt that. Yep. So I don't. It's not. It's not a socialization process. Okay. It is not nurture, but it is perhaps both nature and nurture. So we have it, but we enhance it and develop it further throughout life. That's my. There was somebody saying any Patwari phrases. No, but speaking about that, I did. Let me see. Can I? Un momentico. Let me see. Can I bring up? I did have. I came across a clip that I found hilarious. Let me see if I can get it. Bring it up here. I didn't store it, but it should be close by. Un momentico. No? There it is. With all these people into Ertugrul, now I'm not into it, but here there was a clip I'd seen that was, what? Where'd it go? It was dubbed in Punjabi, and I found it so hilarious. So if I can find what's going on, I just brought it up and still. Where did it go? Ertugrul. There it is. Let's see. Right, some people. Oh, right, okay. Check this out, people. I've seen this. I've seen this. One moment.
ਜੇ ਮਟਕ ਮਟਕ ਕੇ ਟੁਰ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ ਓਏ ਮੇਰੇ ਪਿੰਡ ਸਕੂਲ ਖੁੱਲਣ ਦੀਆਂ ਸ਼ਰਤਾਂ ਕੀ ਨੇ ਇਹ ਮੈਂ ਤਾਂ ਲਿਖਵਾ ਦੇਣਾ ਤੇਰਾ ਪਹਿਲਾ ਜੁਰਮ ਹੈ ਵੇ ਕਿ ਤੂੰ 15 ਸਾਲ ਸਕੂਲੋਂ ਖਾਰਾ ਕਰ ਰਿਹਾ
ए गली तेरी प्योली you're Ertugrul, you're doing it. I just saw that actually the other day. I just couldn't stop laughing. Right, so where we at, people? Where we at? What's going down? Let me check with some of the Facebook questions as well. All right, there you are, people. Somebody said that, yep, those women look like the Amazigh. All right, so is everything played? Okay, just checking. Right, so people, before we move on to some of the other topics, let me just check. Oh, right. All right, there was actually a little perfume I wanted to review, actually. People, I got this sample. Right, you can't probably look at it. It's Tom Daxon. I actually thought it was called, I thought it might have been something like, if they gave it a name like Tom Dasson, it would have probably worked out better. But this is an English, I believe it's an English of company. This is called Iridium. So I thought, let me give this a little try. So it came through. You can't actually, I tried finding quite a few reviews for it online and I couldn't. It's something which very few people have reviewed. Then I found one or two odd reviews and I saw that an interview with Tom Daxon himself about the brand, and really, in all honesty, I just thought it was a pathetic kind of pitch, because he just undersold the whole thing, made it seem very just unappealing, even though it's meant to be a niche brand, that's something slightly higher hitting than your average designer. So the average kind of Givenchy, or I don't know, whatever you're into, Dior, this would be the average one, slightly above that, if not maybe with the best of them on par, but generally above that. So maybe, I don't know, I'm assuming, if I recall correctly, I think a bottle would be about 130, 140 pounds, something like that. So, and it was so undersold by the by the designer himself, not selling it at all. And I thought that is such a pathetic sales pitch. So it's they've described it as all the powdery sophistication of iris with a strong silvery spine. And that's exactly the words he uses in his interview as well. And it's got juniper, and you see carrot seed, right? But one of the things that definitely stands out is cedar wood. So you get that cedar wood kind of fragrance. You get vetiver, definitely. I put some on earlier on today. It's probably been several hours now, maybe about 8 hours or something, and it's still there, very faint. It's got a soft presence to it at this stage, but when you open it up, it's not very hard hitting. Its projection is quite low. Doesn't have much sillage, the trail. However, you can definitely see feel that cedar wood rising pretty much, pretty soon into it, like within seconds. And that's really the smell that dominates that cedar wood. It is actually a pleasant amount of cedar wood. It's not overwhelming, and the vetiver definitely makes a nice kind of combination with it. It kind of gels well with it. I would say, yeah, it's definitely, I do like it, and I can see that, look, it's been on for several hours, and it develops into something a bit softer, almost as though it's got a touch of vanilla or something in it. I'm not sure if they have, but it seems to have that feel to it. But I don't know if it's worth that price, to be honest. I wouldn't really, but I would probably grade it maybe about, I don't know, probably give it about a, just about stretching towards a 7 out of 10. And that's being generous with it, really. So it's good, but I don't think it's worth that kind of price that it's being sold for. Alright, people, that was for the fragrance fanatics out there. You're doing it. Right, people, now we have, I did want to speak about, just checking some notes that, just in case there were certain things I'm forgetting. Right, I'd come across a video clip. Not that one. But I'd come across.
So the first question we're going to be doing.
Nope, not again. So let me just see about relationships, and I think it was a social media story. Some girl speaking about her marriage, and then how it all goes downhill. So let's take a quick look. So she's giving, as you can see, the whole. So you can see from there, people, that, So you can see from there that this girl, her relationship clearly wasn't working out after it was brilliant. And then she realizes that the divorce, much after that, what it really came down to was magic. Yeah. Now, you see, this is the issue. We have to understand that, look, relationships are based on many factors. many crucial factors. Amongst them, character, personality, interaction skills, like how people interact with other people. Also keeping in mind, and this just comes down to luck as well, circumstances. Because a lot of people, you have to remember that they may be very decent, but their circumstances may prevent them from having a successful relationship. So as an example, let's say somebody can't find work. Now, because of this, they will now struggle to make payments, which leads to, altercations, maybe not being able to get certain shoppings, go on certain holidays, or go out, or do certain things. They've got strains. These strains have been brought onto the relationship by external factors. Maybe themselves, they're decent people, the other spouse is a decent person, and their interaction is great as well. However, just luck, did not favor them. If we, not to sound superstitious, but if you catch my drift, and sometimes it could be other things, like people, they live with families, they live with in-laws, and that's definitely a huge kind of desi thing that goes on all the time. I don't know why that's coming on in the background. Right, let me just switch that off. That same video bringing the sad music in. So yeah, now what does this mean? Right, what it means is it's just life. That's exactly what it is. It is not, somebody's done a magic spell on you. If you are having problems at work or in your relationship, at home, with yourself, with health, it is not because somebody sitting somewhere is casting a magic spell on you. That is 100% not what is happening. I can tell you that. What it is that something, a factor, is playing up. You need to address that factor if you can. In some scenarios, you can't. It may just be, it may just be inevitable, but it is what it is. It's life. So you can't, but to fall into this, later on we got a spiritual diagnosis by an imam, by an amil, who said, I figured it out. What it was a jinn. What it was a magic spell. Somebody did this to you, somebody who hates you, can you think of somebody close to you but is jealous of you? And then everybody's like, I know who it is. But this is actually such a widespread problem with the Muslim communities that, unfortunately, that they just, it's so easy for them to, it's so gullible when it comes to this point that, somebody that's jealous of me has done a magic spell on me. You get this, honestly. You get it with many, and somebody had asked earlier on about the question about the sacks with the jinns. But that's another department that you get people, they can't perform the sacks because the jinn and the magic, somebody's done a magic spell. They're like, look, I'm gifting you special abilities today. Yeah. So for the next, you have one wish. You can, what would you like it to be? Let me guess. Is it that I want all the gold in a particular reserve to come? No. Is it I want so much X amount of Bitcoin to come? No. Is it money? No. I want to become famous? No. Is it I want all the luxuries of the world? No. Is it no. Is it books, knowledge? No. Toba. What is it? What is that one magical, supernatural wish of yours to be, your command to execute? What is that? I want him to lose his erection. This is how dumb it gets. Like, come on, if people had such magical powers, don't you think they would use them on something that would at least, something incredible, rather than saying, I know, what I want to use it on is so my advice, people, is that, look, stay well away from all this kind of stuff, please. It really is nothing but a misery. Cool. And speaking of people being miserable, people being miserable, right? I recently had oh, right, before I get to that, sorry, I almost forgot. Those of you that have asked me previously, I've spoken about Bro Haji. All right, who I actually like and I get on with. Bro Haji has been accused that where does he get his knowledge from? That, who is behind Bro Haji? To the extent, people, that they assume I am one of the people. Let me see if I can... Un momento. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Right.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah.
Right, no. I gotta bring this up to show you guys.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salamu.
Right, but there was a post made where people were asking, who is behind Bro Haji? How does he get his knowledge? So what they had put up was that it's Mufti Abu Layth is one of the people, and I thought I just wanted to share it out if I can. Yep, here it is. All right. So this, you see, people go to this extent. I was so surprised considering how different our views are. You would not expect. See, so there it is. You can see people saying, I wonder who's behind Bro Haji. Who could it be? Who? Yeah, this one. So so they put it down to who could this be? Is he a puppet? What's going on? And then they say these are the people potentially who may be behind him. Is it Yasir Qadi, our beloved? Or is it Mufti Abu Layth? Or is it Muhammad Hijab? This, honestly, the conspiracy theories going on within the Muslim scene are so crazy. Right, people, let's move on. I'm going to Mufti Abu Layth. What about the Hadith? Right, okay, I can't see that full question. But yeah, that would make an interesting trio. Yasir Qadi, Muhammad Hijab, and then me, all behind Bro Haji. Right, before I forget, let's move on to taking some questions. Then we got to wrap this up. Let me, people, first of all, address some of the questions put forward by the Patreoncitos. that they'd listed. One moment. All right. So, Irfan Muhammad asks the question that उम्मीद है आप खैरियत से हैं. Alright, you're doing it. गुनाह क्या है? और अगर कोई चीज गुनाह है तो क्या उसके पीछे कुछ वजह भी होनी चाहिए? So, okay, he's asking what is a sin and should sins have a reason behind them? As in, are they stipulated based upon a particular welfare? And the answer is, of course, sins in essence are those things that Allah has forbidden, and they are usually things which violate the five, which are known as the daruriyat, the five essentials, which would be the faith, life, ad-deen, an-nafs, al-aql, that violate reason or the intellect, nasl, progeny, wal-mal, or wealth. Now you'll find these things are usually stipulated as a sin. Right, okay. Next, Imad, you're doing it. Hope you and your family are well. Shukran, love from Bangalore, India. Wah, wah, wah. Phir bhi dil hai Hindustani. You're doing it, Imad. To say I've become an admirer of your thoughts and ideas about Islam. Alright, you're doing it. I need your help in understanding the concept of shafa'ah. I'm very confused with this. The traditional understanding does seem to breed indirect or in some cases direct shirk. Why would Allah have a concept like this, which would allow the people to indirectly venerate the intercessor or become grateful to the intercessor other than him? Some of the ayat of the Qur'an also add to this confusion, where he's saying that all shafa'ah is only with him except the one he allows. Quite puzzled with this idea, it doesn't seem consistent. Or the standard understanding of the word shafa'ah itself is wrong to begin with. Best regards. That is a very intricate question, Ahmad. Indeed, you're doing it. You're doing it with the questioning. I gotta say that. You see, now, when Allah says that there's none that He allows, illa except those whom He chooses. See, once again, that's just a reinforcement of saying it's Him, it's Allah, that is ultimately the one making the decision. That's what it's reinforcing, that idea. It's not trying to reinforce an idea that you should venerate other people. However, it does give people hope to extend their loyalties. You see, many people, as believers, especially the early community, and even now, they have a loyalty to who has given them that faith. So in our case, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they have this loyalty to him, and they see him as this great figure, and it gives them some ease of mind, thinking that, look, that this person who is chosen by God is on my side, is to help me with God. Now, it's true that Allah Himself is the most compassionate. But why then allow this view of being given aid by someone? Like in saying that, well, He's on my side. It's really just, it's to cater for that human sense of affiliation and loyalty. That's what it is. So, because this does tie into a fundamental human need, and that is the need of belonging. Like humans have and even other creatures by extension have a fundamental need to belong. Now, belonging to this faith with the Prophet as its leader and the loyalty that one professes to the Prophet, to be met then with some comfort that this Prophet equally vouches for you, especially those people who met the Prophet, obviously, and us by extension who haven't met him, it does consolidate that faith at a conceptual level. Okay. It's not to kind of say, oh, start worshipping the Prophet or something. It's not to extend that. So I hope that makes some sense, although that is indeed an amazing question. Not many people have analyzed this from that perspective. Nisar Salam Mufti, you're doing it. I'm 28. Do you think it's too late for me to try to do hifth? I'm looking at doing tafsir reading myself while study Qur'an. Whilst I study the Qur'an more in detail, is there a tafsir you would recommend? Thank you, and keep doing what you do. Shukran, Nisar. Right now, I don't think it's too late to do hifth. If you want to do hifth and you're prepared to do it, then by all means, it is a mission, isn't it? It's an objective. Some people say, well, if you do it, you should be worried about the sin, that if you forget it, or if this happens or that happens. I would say that is absolutely the wrong way of going about. That's just ridiculous. If you want to do it, think of it as something amazing that you're embarking on. If you're learning Arabic at the same time, that definitely helps with memorizing the Qur'an, and the Qur'an will then help with your Arabic. So it kind of, there's this interlocking reinforcement. Now, but it's entirely up to you. As to tafsirs, see, with English, I don't really know, once again, what could be a tafsir. I think the study Qur'an should be good. I haven't read it myself, but I have taken a look at some parts of it. It would definitely, I'm pretty sure it would be good. Right, can you, Idris, you're doing it. Can you clarify your opinion on At-Tabari and his work? You previously mentioned he was like the Tiberius of the Muslim Ummah. In the video of the Prophet's marriage to Zainab. Tabari, Tiberius. You see, I am like 70% sure, put it like that, that Imam Tabari was a Shia, but he was kind of like a closet Shia. Now, there's nothing wrong with being a Shia per se. People are Sunni or Shia, but you see, I feel that he surreptitiously was aiding the Shia creed within Sunni thought. So, and this is why he includes a unfathomable amount of narrations from hard-line Shia narrators, and he doesn't just bring, he floods the Sunni channel with so much Shia, so many Shia sources that much of it becomes indistinguishable by later, and it's taken up by Sunni, by the Sunni audience. You see, the reason why I don't, obviously, that's why I was referring to him as the Tiberius, in the sense that he kind of caused a lot of problems for what we have. And I think Sunnis just shied away from it and said that nah, he wasn't Shia, he was Sunni, and that's a different Tabari. Tabari. They go, there's another one with the exact same name, exact same parents' name, exact same kunya, but his granddad's name was different. And the funny thing is, apparently that Rustam that they say, Ibn Rustam, was the name of the great grandfather of this Tabari, but before becoming a Muslim. So, yeah, and so this is why I've just found it quite amusing. I mean, I don't have any hatred or anything for Imam Tabari. I just feel that he definitely caused a lot of confusion. And I don't think he innocently caused it. I think he caused it knowingly, knowing what he was doing. Like he engineered it to be like that, and it was quite successful because he kept the Sunni cloak, but then he flooded his narrations, especially in his Tariq, with all these Shia narrations and other things as well, just causing confusion sometimes and transmitting stuff. And I don't know what he was thinking when he's transmitting some of the things he was transmitting. It's like, satanic verses and other things, and I don't get it. But he obviously must have had some plan. So the Sunni response is, oh, nah, he didn't have a plan. He was just, you know what, he was just innocently creating an encyclopedia for people to say, hey, you sift through it. Acha, cha, cha. You're Tiberius the innocent. I think he definitely knew what he was doing, but I just don't fully understand what that plan was. Like, why was he bringing these narrations and putting them, and was it just simply to say, hey, I know these narrations? But then in all honesty, nobody really cares whether you knew them or not. It's not because Imam Tabari wasn't of that status. He was much later. I don't know. That's my thoughts anyway. Siad, you're doing it. Siad says, how would you answer children who ask their parents if they have committed certain sins when the parents were younger? Children from ages of 6 and up. Be totally honest but only what's age appropriate. Lie until they reach maturity and then tell them any others. If children ask you what sins you've committed, don't be telling your children what sins you've committed. I wouldn't. I mean, that's just silly, I think. And plus, children are very conniving. This one, very, very naughty. Children will forever. And I think children, and in that department, this department of all of a sudden developing a Imam Bukhari memory, that's going to be children and women. When you express something that you've done wrong, that stuff will never be erased. Okay, everything else could be forgotten. The whole entire hifth, they could forget their hifth. They could forget. They could forget every single, thing they've learnt in life, but they will remember this, and children will remember it as well. If you've done something wrong, say, but you did this, you naughty. And women as well will remember that. But if my memory serves me correct, haddathani. So this one, be very careful, Right, so I'm just praising the good memory that they have. Right, so can you elaborate what is meant by the saved sect? Nisa, you doing it, much love. 72 sects. This hadith is not a sahih hadith, okay? And people like San'ani, San'ani and Ibn Hazm, these people have, criticized and torn apart this hadith as inauthentic. Right, what is going down? Majid Wahid said, facts, Mufti, facts. See, Majid, you can tell somebody's been hurt by that. He probably decided to pour his heart out someday. And the other person thinking, cha, pouring heart out. Theek hai puttar. Mental note made, did this wrong, did this, confessed. That one where people say, trust me, I'm not going to hold this against you. Just no, don't be gullible. This, or if a woman ever asks you that, is there anything that is, is there anything that's what is it, that you find, what's the word to say? So, what do you find wrong with me? Or something, let's say, God, if ever expressed like this, or in its extreme form, if they said anything that you find bad looking about me, like ugly about me, just be honest. Be honest. For that, the whole of the male race would be looking at you like saying, and you'd probably be thinking, oh, I really love the transparency, the kind of dialogue we've got going on right now. I really like this vibe. And you're about to open up, and the whole of the male humanity would be like, Ah, for the love of that life that you have, never go down that. This road, very dark. Ooh. None come back alive from that road. Say wrong, ugly. Toba. What could they be? What could be possibly ugly about this divine beauty? And you shall live a prosperous life, people. Some advice to my fellow viewers. Right, so what is going? That's a lose-lose situation, exactly. But trust me, I've known some people to have fallen victim to it. And you think, huh? No, you didn't. You didn't. But they did. So, right, people, did that happen to you? It happened to me. Hell no. Do I look like that? Do I look that gullible? So, no. This one slightly more experienced than that, So, people, now we've gone on way too long. We have to go to our beloved people, our beloved. So, moving to the un momentico, people. All right, the masala segment, people. The masala. So, as you all know, right, we discussed last week.
So today is going to be a very atypical person.
It's not going to be about. We discussed last week, if you recall, that what's this? ¿Qué es eso? What's this interesting craze that recently the Salafiyah have embarked upon, where Zakir Naik Sahab all of a sudden had his enlightenment and said that, look, this on haram, this on makruh. So no sooner had we spoken about that, and then our own.
So the first question we're going to be doing, inshallah ta'ala, is the permissibility of self-stimulation or.
You're teasing us. Self-stimulation. Let's go back to this question with Yasir Qadi. People, pay attention. Yaar, not you.
The first question we're going to be doing, inshallah ta'ala, is the permissibility of self-stimulation or masturbation. Is it permissible in Islam, or is this act sinful? The majority of scholars, the majority of madhabs view masturbation as being haram or sinful. And they base this on the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forbids all sexual activity except with one's spouse. Okay. And Allah says in the Qur'an that whoever إلا على أزواجهم أو ما ملكت أيمانهم فإنهم غير ملومين فمن ابتغى وراء ذلك فأولئك هم العادون. That Allah praises those who protect their private parts, except, Allah says in the Quran, Surah Al-Mu'minun, except with their spouses or their right-hand possessions. Whoever is within this confines, that is permissible. However, some of the scholars of the past, they did consider it to be makruh, and others consider it to be mubah. So there are three primary positions in this, so that he avoids the bigger sin of actual zina, of actual intercourse that is haram. And he also mentions very explicitly that the same ruling applies for a woman, that a woman can also resort to this if there is a fear of falling into zina. And there are a number of athar, of reports from the Sahaba and Tabi'un that indicate that this position was found amongst them as well. A man came to Ibn Abbas, the cousin of the Prophet, a young man came to Ibn Abbas, and he mentioned that, he's not, married, and that he basically stimulates himself until he ejaculates. Ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala an said to him, what you are doing is better than committing zina. But if you were to marry a slave girl, that is even better than what you are doing. Now, and of course, Ibn Hazm has an entire section on this as well, the famous scholar of Andalus, as I mentioned. And Ibn Hazm mentions that it is allowed to touch one's organ, even if it's with the left hand, it is allowed to touch one's organ. And Ibn is not the norm, no doubt. Self-stimulation is not natural, despite what psychologists might say. It is not the norm, and that is why the default is that there is a sense of shame and a sense of regret when somebody does this, even if you're not a Muslim. There are looking to get married and making dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help us to get married, and we also understand that even if the act is permissible, and I do believe that there's no sin in doing it, that the default is that it is makruh, and makruh means it's better not to do. So the default is that, as Ibn Hazm says, لَيْسَ مِنْ مَكَارِمِ الْأَخْلَاقِ. It's not from the nobility of deeds. But just
See, so no sooner had we spoken about Zakir Naik that Yasir Qadi does a Q&A on intimacy issues, and he too comes out, me too, hashtag me too, and he says, well, actually, it's not haram. It's not a sin. It's just not from the nobility, rather. And the left hand, I think, you're teasing. Is he teasing me? Is that for us left-handers as well? Is he taking us into consideration? Yeah. Felt a great sense of relief. I was like, acha, us left-handers, we haven't been left out of this. So it's not haram. It's just not from the noble class. Oh, the nobility do not self-stimulate. Rather, they have their maids who come and stimulate them. Unless, of course, you got slave girls. Ab yaar, ye sasura slave girls kahan se milengi? Where are we going to get slave girls from? So it's interesting how even Sheikh Yasir Qadi has now come out and said, this is not haram. You see now, but it comes back to that point, doesn't it? Because people would say, but Mufti kahe ko tang kar rahe ho? You know, why this one? Why? Wait, un momentico. Yeah. That's actually a song. Ka mangele yaar. So that's your dirty wine. That's actually a song. That's actually a song. So the reason is that, look, these people for decades have been guilt tripping so many Muslims, making them feel burdened by sin, telling them they're going to be punished by the hellfire, telling them they're going to go to hell, telling them God will, it's going to ruin their relationships, they're going to do this. Whilst I bet you many of them secretly themselves believed it was okay and chalo, whether they practice or not, this one, sorry, it's not from the nobility. Not from the stimulate. Oh, stimulate, come on, stimulate people. Oh yeah. Right, it's not stimulating. Don't self-stimulate. But you see, to other people, they would say, oh, you're going to go to hell. You're going to go to hell, you are. This is haram. Allah's going to punish you. Adhabun alim. Adhabun alim. So the question is, but all these people who've been suffering, how is this justified for them? Now all of a sudden you just come out and you say, well, actually it's not a sin. I mean, yaar koi hal nazal al-wahi? Was there, did revelation come down overnight, or did everything just change? Did hellfire get a bit temperature go down, in hellfire? What is this one? And these people, you see, they would obviously say about me that I'm spreading all these kind of rulings, I'm making people corrupt. This is what they would say. But yet, it's them. Like when you look at them, they themselves have now come out and said, well, actually, just one moment, I was just looking if I had this. No, there was I want to share this. No. Right, so no, it's not here. Right, so this is my issue. This is why when I see these things, I think, at least you should come out and apologize. You should at least say, look, I apologize to all those Muslims who I may have misinformed over the years. I now realize, because look, him quoting Ibn Hazm, which by the way I quoted years ago, they knew what Ibn Hazm had to say. Him quoting the Hanbali madhab saying that, oh, this is permissible, they knew that years ago. No new information has come to them. It's just that now they've realized they can get away with it by saying it publicly. So you see my point now about the two-faced thing, about the hypocrisy in these circles, that behind closed doors, I've told you before, behind closed doors, most of these imams don't believe in half of what they preach. They just do this because they expect, because this is what the public, you see, it's like this vicious circle. They think the public need them to say this, because if they say something different, they're going to get rejected. So they say it. The public hear them say it, and it reinforces that vicious circle. So the public think, of course, and now the public expect them, and it's this kind of this loop that they're trapped in. But yeah, so I was just like, wow, okay, because first of all, Zakir Naik has had this revelation, Wahi, yeah, and I'm thinking, yeah, does Wahi only, why is Wahi coming to all these ex-Salafis? हम भी हैं यार, मैं भी हूँ, मैं हूँ ना, I need to tell यार. But then I realized, oh, I've already been enlightened. I'm ahead of the curve. It's these guys trying to catch up. So yeah, so this is why I had to speak on that. It's not because I'm after fixated on our beloved. It's just that I thought, you know what, that why for so long make people feel guilty, and then only to say, oh yaar, don't do it yaar, don't do it, man, not the noble class. The noble, the nobility, one does not peruse self-stimulation. That's, to just say that, I mean, come on, that's that deserves a, Lulia is the name of an actress. That's what it is, people. People, we gotta wrap this up, you know. It's been epic, as always. Now that we're all super excited, that it's not just more and more Salafi scholars are coming out giving these glad tidings. So we've got something to rejoice about, people. But other than that, it's got very late. I'm going to leave you to it. Have an awesome evening wherever you are. If you haven't already, people, liked, subscribed, then then instead of sharing these fatwas, I should just share the haram, self-stimulation, haram. All right, people, there you go. Subscribe. We've gone over now. The subscribers are rising, rising this one. See, the more subscribers we get, people, the more people will be willing to engage. Okay, because they'll think, well, okay, there's a lot of, people that will watch this or listen to this. They have to kind of take your point into consideration. They can't just lock you out. So even though many people thought, haramis, many people, they did think that they could lock me out. But this one, no es possible. जिस तरह तुम गुजारते हो फराज, जिंदगी इस तरह गुजरती नहीं. Wah, wah, wah. So that's an epic poem by Ahmed Faraz. That जिस तरह तुम गुजारते हो फराज, the way you have lived or spent your life. जिंदगी इस तरह गुजरती नहीं. Life cannot be lived in that way. So people, till next time, take very good care of yourselves. Wassalamullahi alaikum. Here's the final page coming out. And I did have... Not Hori. Right? And Miss Patreoncitos, Patreons, much love to you as always. Right? Take very good care of yourselves. Wassalamullahi alal qawm.